Welcome to session 7 of my November webinar series. This is Scale Techniques for Improvisation Part 2. So if you haven't already done so, go back to pianoandwillie.com/November. This is the schedule of lessons that are going to be coming up. So today is Scale Part 2, and then you can see the schedule right here. I'm not going to go through and read it all. But basically, go ahead and sign up, pianoandwillie.com/November, and you will be able to get access to all of that material and those live sessions. Okay, so today we're going to be moving on to part 2 of our scale stuff. And if you haven't already taken a look at part 1, you can take a look at part 1. Basically in part 1, what I was doing is we were playing that E flat major scale, basically starting on any one of these notes. Okay, so basically when I went to D, I played an E flat major scale starting on D. When I went to G, I played an E flat major scale starting on G, and we talked about a couple of reasons why we do that, and then also why we might change some of those notes. Okay, so today what I want to talk about is how you can now start to not just sound like it's going up and down a scale, but it could start to sound a little bit more like music. So I have an example here. Let me play it along with the play along track. You will get this sheet music and the play along track if you've signed up for the webinar. So be sure to check your email. It is only going out via email. So here we go. Okay, all right, so now you can hear that, of course, it still sounds like an exercise because, well, it is an exercise, but now it starts to sound a little bit more shapely, okay? Now let's go through and talk about what it is that I'm doing here. Okay, so the first thing is take a look at this first 2 measures here, that E flat major chord, okay? And I also want to say, of course, this improvisation is not blowing the doors off of anyone's ears. It's not like, whoa, that's the best improvisation I've ever heard in my life. That's not the point right now, okay? And if you're thinking that like, oh, I want this to sound better, well, these are the steps to get there. The first step is figuring out the key and what scale you can use. Now we got to figure out, well, how can we change that scale around so that we can do other things with it? And that's exactly what we're doing here in this measure, okay? So what you'll notice that right here, what am I doing? I am outlining the chord. So I have the root, the 7th, the 5th, and the 3rd of the chord, okay? So let me zoom this in a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. Okay. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm outlining my chord. Now, did I have to do it that way? No, I could have done that. Did I have to do quarter notes? No, I didn't have to do that as well. I could have done something like that, where I'm still outlining notes of that E flat major 7 chord, okay? Point is that I am taking notes from the chord, okay? So I'm using notes from the chord and outlining that chord. In this case, I just did quarter notes just to make it simple. And then I used exactly the same measure from our last webinar, okay? So just coming right on down that E flat major scale. So we move to the D minor 7 flat 5. Now, right here, is this the absolute be-all, end-all, like best idea for an improvisation? Well, no, okay? I mean, like we could take a look at this, like this right here, like that jump, you know, that jump might be a little bit abrupt. The point is that we're just trying to bring in chord tones along with our scalar playing, okay? Because this is what happens, okay? When we sit and we improvise, okay, we really can be thinking about a couple of different things. One, we could think about scales, all right? And a lot of times, this is where students get hung up. They get hung up on like, well, what scale do I use? What scale do I use? What scale do I use? What scale? What scale? What scale? What scale? I want to know what the scale is. And the reality is that, well, you know what? You can improvise using any notes on the piano. Okay? Like a good improviser can take really any notes on the piano and make it sound good. They're not thinking in terms of like, oh, I'm an E flat major, so I need to use an Ionian scale, but maybe I can use a Ionian sharp 11 scale, you know, like a Lydian scale. They're not thinking that way. Okay? They're also not necessarily just using their ears. So real important distinction there. Okay? Good improvisers use their ears, okay, but they also use their brains too. So they're realizing what it is that they can play and what they can't play and where they want to move and stuff. And I actually shouldn't have said can't play, because you can play anything, but it's more that they're thinking about what sound are they looking for at that time. So the first thing is scales. The second thing is chords. Okay? So we utilize our chord tones because the chord tones are guaranteed to sound good. All right? So why not use them? So when I do that, when I play those notes of that E flat major 7th chord, they're all going to sound good. All right? Every one of these notes is guaranteed to sound good. Whereas with a scale, maybe if I play this note, oh yeah, that doesn't sound so good. But if I play that as a passing tone, all right, not so bad. And then the last thing is rhythm. Okay? When you're listening to somebody improvising, what you're really hearing that you like is the rhythm. It's usually not the notes. 9 times out of 10, what you're really cluing into is that rhythm. Okay? Because, like I've said before, many times, you can get away with playing just about anything if you play it with good rhythm. All right, so moving back to this. All right, so we have our outline of our chord, and we're just coming right on down the scale. Okay, so no real heavy lifting here. Okay, now when I move on to this next section here, look at what I did. I did the same thing. I kept it as 8th notes, but I outlined the chord. Root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, right there. And in this section right here was I already had that in the last webinar, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm taking and I'm playing some new stuff and I'm playing some old stuff. So this is new. Whoops. This is from before, okay? Just like this is from before. So in my last webinar, you'll notice from the music there, this is exactly the same. That's exactly the same. This right here is different. Now, why am I doing that? It's a very important reason why I'm doing that. Why I'm doing that is because I am not reinventing the wheel every time, okay? So when I look at a piece of music, okay, what I'm thinking is, if I have my piece of music here, okay, well, actually I don't need to do that. This whole page is a piece of music. And I have measures, right? And I have stuff that's within each of those measures. I think of just basic like word processing, copying and pasting. So then I think to myself, okay, well, I already have this stuff here. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to change just the first part here, and then maybe I'll change the last part there. But the rest of this stuff I'll keep exactly the same. Okay? So rather than coming up with brand new stuff every single time, I'm utilizing what I already have. Okay? Very, very important. Good improvisers do that. Okay? You'll notice many times that when listening to an improviser, they're not always coming up with brand new stuff. And you'll probably, if you've listened to an artist enough, you've probably already realized that, oh, I've heard them play something like that before or something similar. Okay? All right, so that was, oops. This was new. This was already there. And then now look at what I did right in here. So here I changed this around pretty, this whole measure is new. So I started to go up and down that E flat scale. But if you remember last time when we were talking about that E flat scale, we kind of hit that C natural. We really wanted that B natural instead because it's a G7 chord, okay? So instead, I didn't even get to the B. I just played that first part of the E flat major scale, went back down, and then what did I do? I outlined the chord because I know it's going to work. Now listen to that line now. And we go to the C minor. Okay, so perfect, works perfectly. Now, if you're taking a listen to this and you're like, hey, I kind of like that sound. Well, what can you do? You could take that and you can move it around to other keys. Okay, so now if I wanted to move this now into, I don't know, the key of, well, let's say I want to do it on F. Okay, I'll just go down one whole step. So the first thing that I would look at is I'm going up to my flat 9 and my sharp 9. So, and I go to the B flat minor. Okay, if I'm going to do it on D. Going to G minor. Okay? So taking these little snippets here that you find that you like the sound of it and practicing it in all 12 keys, real smart idea. Okay? I used to do that when I was first starting out, and I suggest that you do the same. Okay, so right here, C minor 7. Again, what's going on here? 3rd, root, 5th, 3rd. Okay. So. And in this section right in here, okay, was from exactly before playing that scale. So again, hopefully you're noticing this. Okay, this was the scale, and then this was all brand new. Okay, and all I did to make something brand new was I just outlined notes of the chord. You know, I'm just arpeggiating notes of the chord coming down, playing a very, very simple rhythm, just very simple quarter notes. Okay, I think when I played before. Okay, so 3rd, root, 5th, 3rd. And then we go on to the B flat minor. Now, this is a great example in here as well. So we're at the root, okay? And then this is basically just going up and down that E flat scale, okay? Except there's a little difference here, right? That B flat. So now why do we go to B flat? Well, I'm sorry, D flat rather. Well, this B flat chord is a B flat minor chord, right? So we have that minor 3rd in there, okay? So we need to change that D to a D flat. Now, in my last session, I was also telling you how, like, one of the things we talk about in jazz piano theory is to start to see that that's a 2-5-1 right here. And then when you have that 2-5-1 progression, you could just use the scale from your 1 chord over that whole 2-5-1 progression. Okay, that's a very, very important concept that like I ended up learning later on, and I wish I learned it much, much sooner. When you have a 2-5-1 progression, whatever the 1 chord is, that's the scale that you can use over the 2 and the 5 chord as well. Okay, so really important to know that, because it makes your life a lot easier for improvisation. Improvisation is about speed. Okay. You need to really be, I don't mean playing fast, I mean processing fast, okay? Improvisation is about speed, not playing fast, processing fast. You need to be able to look at something and immediately react to it, okay? And immediately have this whole list of theoretical possibilities, and immediately in your ear have sounds of what that would sound like, but then also rhythmically what that would feel like as well. Okay, so that's what you're looking for in improvisation. Something that can definitely be learned, okay, but it's something that takes time. You have to build this stuff up. Okay, so taking a look at this B flat minor, you see I start with the quarter notes, and then kind of go up a little bit, and then come down. All right, and what's nice about this line is it's a very simple line. Okay, just utilizing these notes, but we go up a little bit and come down a little bit. So what's nice about that is a lot of times when you see stuff like this, what do you notice here? This is just like up, 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 you know, just going up, 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 right? But now we go, and then we kind of come down. So we kind of have this shape like this, right, in that line. And what's nice is you see that squiggly stuff. What we don't want is we don't want an improvisation line that just does this all the time. Okay? We're looking for some shape. Okay, so and then now where do we end up? And what am I doing here? I am outlining the notes of the E flat 7 chord. And then just coming down the rest of the notes of the scale. Until finally I come back and I hit that A flat, kind of coming up like that. Now look at how nice this works out too. This is the stuff that I really dig. I think this is cool to look at in music. Okay, so you're going up the notes of the E flat 7. Okay, that works out perfectly for 8th notes, 1 and 2 and then coming down at this point, 3 and 4 and we end on the 3rd, okay, of E flat, and then very easy, just move up a half step right to the root there of that A flat. Okay. Now something I could have also done is I could have come from above here, and rather than going to the G there, I could have gone to the B. So and something like that. But what's written here is But what I love about this kind of stuff is look at how nice this shape all works together. Just kind of going right on up the notes of the chord, coming down some of the notes of the scale, and then leading right back into what your target note is. Okay, and we're getting to that A flat. Right, so real cool stuff. All right, so moving on here. Then when we move to A flat. Same thing here. So rather than just going up and down the scale, like we were doing before. At that point, I think I was playing an E flat major scale. Right, rather than just going up and down the scale, now we kind of have some shape to this. So start on the root, go up to the 3rd, back to the root, and then back up to that 3rd, but then come down notes of the scale. And then this F minor 7 flat 5 to B flat 7 was all what we were doing before, right? In the last session, it's that 4-note pattern: 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, and then going to the E flat. This pattern right here, I'm going to tell you, if you don't practice that pattern, or if you haven't practiced that pattern, I would definitely suggest that you practice that pattern. Very, very good pattern to have. And all you do is just go to like on your minor chords, 1, 2, 3, 5. Just like you're working on any of your minor chords. And what's nice is moving it around. So like E flat, that's F, C, D flat, B, B flat, G flat, A flat, G, E, D. Here's a good practice tip for you right here. Just play root 5, and the left hand is a simple little bass line. This is moving by minor thirds, kind of a cool sound. Go down. So I know I moved a little bit faster just to kind of like show you, right? So the main point there is if you're not getting that, it's just that pattern. 1, 2, 3, 5. I was doing it over minor. Of course, I could do it over major as well. Right? It's a little side note there, a little something else that you can practice. It's a little bit more advanced, okay? All right, so now, like I said, you will end up getting this sheet music that you could practice this along with the play along as well, okay? Now, couple of thoughts I want to leave you with. Okay, some things that you can practice. Okay, so the first thing that you can practice is do the scale work, right? That's what we did in the last session, right? That was session 6, okay? So make sure, take a look at the replay for session 6. Make sure that you can go through and play the scale stuff. Second thing you should do is anytime you are working on a piece, okay, you should go through and just work through your chord tones. So in So there's There'll Never Be Another You. I'm just going through and just playing the chord tones. Now I could do it in a very specific straight rhythm, or you know, very specifically like doing eighth notes or quarter notes or something. Or you could just kind of like do it free form. Like, okay, I know it's an E flat chord. All right, then D minor, G, C minor, B flat minor, E flat 7, A flat. Okay, so I'm just going through and just saying the chord and working through the chord tones. But notice here in the right hand, like really knowing your chord tones. Again, if you haven't done the piano essentials and chord essentials at Piano with Willie, definitely suggest that you work through that, all of that music and all of those jam tracks as well. Okay, so really knowing your chord tones. Now this right here might literally take months to really go through this, to really get down your chord tones. Right? So now once you are good with that, then it's about rhythm. Okay? And this is what we're going to talk about in the session next week. Okay? So remember, the sessions next week will be Improvisation Scales Part 3, okay, will be on the 21st, okay? And in this one, we will talk about rhythm in this one, okay, in Part 3. So rhythm is really important, because if you don't have good rhythm, then it all just kind of is flat, okay? I'll probably end up talking about dynamics and articulation as well in that session, okay? But rhythm is what's next. But if you don't have down this stuff, like if you don't know the major scale for the key that you're working in and you don't know your chord tones, then it becomes very difficult for you to be able to improvise, okay? So let's think of it this way. This is how I want to leave it with you. Imagine you're learning a foreign language. So you learn the vocabulary, then you start learning how to put these vocabulary words together, okay? That's kind of like the progression you take. Then, what do? Now you start working on the nuances of the language. You know, really like, you know, getting your pronunciation and whatnot sounding a little bit more authentic, okay? But now imagine we flip that around. Imagine that, you know, you started working on a foreign language and so much time was spent trying to develop the nuance of pronunciation and enunciation in that language. Now, wouldn't that be kind of like, you know, backwards there? Because now you're spending all this time working on pronunciation, but you don't know any words yet. You don't know any phrases yet, right? So it's like kind of like, well, you got to have some raw material to work with. That's what this is, okay? All of this stuff here is your raw material. Okay? If you don't have your scales and your chord tones together, then you don't have the raw material necessary to be able to improvise. Okay? Might sound harsh, but it's true. You shouldn't even be thinking about rhythm until you have down all of your chord tones and scale. All right? So when you're going through and you're improvising, okay, on this stuff, does this make sense? Can you play this stuff? Can you come up with this on your own? So if I asked you to sit down and I said, all right, I want you to improvise and, you know, on this song, you got E flat major, can you at least play your chord tones? Play those chord tones? Because if you can't play those chord tones like that, that's where you got to start. And now you don't try and rhythmicize it like that. No, you start very simple. Notice I don't have to constantly do them in the same order. I can kind of move them around, but there I was just playing them as plain old quarter notes, right? I don't have to get rhythmically fancy with it. Right now, the main thing is that you know the chord tones. And then, we're in the key of E flat. Make sure you really know that E flat major scale, okay? That you can play that E flat major scale. So now, if I go through and I improvise, I can improvise over this entire song just using that E flat major scale. Okay, so that's all E flat major scale. Now, I've been improvising for years, so I know how to kind of shape that a little bit with rhythm and dynamics and articulation, but then also choosing the right notes from that E flat major scale that are not going to sound kind of off with the particular chord. Like for instance, I know I'm not going to hang on my E flat there when I'm playing a D minor 7 flat 5. Okay? It's not going to sound all that good. I know I'm not going to hang on that G when playing that G7 flat 9. I'm not going to hang on the C rather. Okay? That's not going to sound all that good. Okay? So there are certain notes that I know are going to sound better than others, and those are the ones that I hang on. Now, what are those notes? They're my chord tones. So when I'm playing this, I know these are going to sound good. It's my chord tones. It's a nice tension there, the 11th on the D minor 7 flat 5. Got my chord tones in there, okay? So I'm going to be constantly going back to those chord tones. Again, this is why, point 2, you need to know your chord tones. Now, one thing that I used to, my father actually used to quiz me on this all the time. It's like E flat major 7, boom, E flat G, B flat D. I had to just know those chord tones, forwards and backwards. D, F, A flat C is D minor 7 flat 5. G, B, D, F is G7 flat 9. Flat 9 is obviously the A flat, so on and so forth. I really know all of those chord tones and my tensions, okay? And then as I started to play more and gig more, it all started to make sense and congeal that, oh, wow, I really need to know those chord tones because that's the shape and the foundation of music, okay? So I will see you next week in the next session. Also remember, next week starts our Black Friday promotions. So if you're interested in studying with me, that is the best time to get in because you're going to get the best deals. And we have a lot of cool announcements coming out next week. So be sure to check your email and also get in on our webinars as well. All right, so anyway, thank you very much. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys next week.